Is Albion Online the MMO to play in 2025? Most of the big MMO YouTubers like Josh, Strife Hayes, Lazy Pion, Kira and Idle have praised the game's new player experience, leaving with largely positive impressions. But here's the real question: what's the game like for a seasoned player? After years of daily gameplay, I will show you what it's really like to live in Albion's world long term and whether it's worth starting now in 2025. We will cover everything you need to know: player numbers, monetization, power creep and much more. Now for those of you who just came for the short answer, it's yes. Albion Online is absolutely worth playing in 2025. The game is in its golden age right now. There's a lot of content, good balance, healthy population of players. Over the years, the game has stayed true to its core principles. There are no calls for classic servers, it just keeps getting better. Albion Online is a sandbox MMORPG. This means that there are no Kilt and Borgs quests, no pick 15 flowers quests, there's not even a main quest, no cheesy story, you are not the chosen one. The game is designed for solo players, small groups and large guilds. This is possible because the game consists of multiple interlocked parts or types of content, and you're expected to pick and play only those parts that actually interest you. Do you like gathering and crafting? The game has a robust system for that. Do you hate gathering and crafting? You'll never have to touch it, and the game will not punish you for ignoring it. Other players who focus on different kinds of content will still affect you, either directly or indirectly. So the entire game works in unison, like a single big entity where everybody does their own thing, and yet they still affect each other. Albion Online features a player-driven economy, where every piece of equipment, like weapons, armor and potions, has to be crafted by real players. Monsters and bosses might still drop these items, like in any other RPG, but even then, these items had to be previously crafted by real players. The game has a MOBA-style combat, similar to League or Dota, except it is much slower. A fight in League or Dota might take a few seconds, while in Albion, it's common for fights to last for minutes. The combat is easy to get into, but it's difficult to master. A veteran player will outplay a newbie 100% of the time. In PvE, you need to pay attention to mobs and dodge their abilities, as they can hit like a truck and can easily down you. Simply staying in place and auto-attacking will always get you killed. When doing PvE in a group, your team needs to work in unison like a well-oiled machine. The game is designed around the holy trinity of healer, tank and DPS, with an occasional support thrown in. Most of the game takes place in little PvP zones. When a player dies, they lose everything they're wearing or carrying in their inventory. Now in a regular MMO this would be a terrible mechanic, but Albion is pretty much designed around this. Death is not permanent, you don't lose your levels, nor do you lose the items that you've securely stashed in your bank. There's always like a roguelite or looter-shooter form of progression. Let's face it, an MMO lives and dies by its player base. So how is the player population in Albion Online? Here's what we know. While most MMOs tend to lose players over time, Albion has remained stable and even showed signs of growth. Unlike many games that merge servers due to declining populations, Albion actually got to launch 2 new servers. First, the East server in early 2023 for players in Asia, then a European server just last year in 2024. Like most MMOs, Albion doesn't disclose exact player numbers. Unfortunately, this seems to be a standard practice in the MMO genre, and thus, we cannot say for certain how big the community actually is. But that the game is expanding rather than consolidating is a good sign. The launch of new servers came with its own share of controversy. The most common concern was that this move might fragment the player base, turning what was once a single busy server into 3, potentially spreading the player base too thin. Although this fear did have some merit, the players were already divided by the time zones they live in. But if you're the kind of player that likes to game at, like, 4 AM in the morning, then you might find yourself in empty areas with less players around. as is the case for all games with regional servers. Power creep is a common issue for many online games, where new content and gear constantly outscales the old, leaving previous items obsolete. In Albion Online, this is hardly a concern. The game features 12 tiers of gear, and throughout its entire history, only a single new tier of item power has been added. This means the core progression remains balanced, with older gear still holding value and not being overshadowed by constant power inflation. There is some controversy surrounding the recently introduced Awakened weapons. These weapons are a late game feature. It was introduced so that the wealthiest of players have something to spend their riches on. Part of the community has raised concerns about the balance that this introduces. Personally, while I don't like this feature, it doesn't seem to have a significant impact on a day-to-day experience of regular players, and it does extend the grind for the ultra-late gamers. Most content in the game remains relevant years after introduction. This is because the game tends to expand horizontally rather than vertically. So instead of constantly adding new zones and stuff atop already existing ones, the developers like to improve the already existing content. Every zone in the game is still relevant, at least somewhat, and sees player action. That being said, the game has leaned heavily into PvP content in the recent updates. New PvE content does get added, but it tends to have some aspect, or at least a prospect, of some PvP included in it. The game is very much what you could call a PvE-VP experience. Old, purely PvE content never got discontinued and people are still running it, but it has gotten a little stale over the years. Botting is a problem that plagues most MMOs, especially those with heavy focus on grinding or gathering. Albion has a unique solution to this problem. Since most of the game is full loot PvP, the bots would just get eaten alive. There are essentially no bots in lethal zones. There are a few safe zones in the game, which are the early game zones where PvP is disabled. On occasion, it's possible to find a gathering or transporting bot here before it gets banned. Luckily, these bots can only gather low tier resources, as the actually good stuff only spawns in the lethal zones. The game is completely free to play. There is a cash shop, but nothing is locked beyond a paywall, except for some vanity skins. You can achieve everything by just playing the game for free, and you can achieve it in a reasonable amount of time. There are no shady tactics, no manipulative value packs, no loot boxes, none of that shit. What you can buy is a premium, which is a subscription that makes progressing through the game significantly faster. It gives you no extra power, but it does give you extra experience for each kill and stuff like that. The premium can also be bought with in-game currency, which is how most veterans get it. A new player won't be able to afford it. More controversially, while the cash shop doesn't sell any in-game items, it does sell the in-game currency, which you can trade with other players for items that they had to grind for. So essentially, you can pay other players to play the game for you. I never understood why people do that, but it's something that can be done in any game whatsoever. Albion just makes it super convenient for swipers and whales, but at least the developers can take a cut from each transaction and develop the game further. In conclusion, the game is in an excellent spot right now, with frequent content updates, healthy population and healthy meta. Albion Online is truly unique and I really think there's nothing quite like it. If you're the kind of gamer who likes a challenge and doesn't like to have their hand held, who has a strong PvP drive or is just looking for an MMO to live in, Albion Online might just be the game for you.